So I'm Roger Blum, president of LVME. LVM stands for Live Voice Management. We're a cloud-based software analytics company. So I know that sounds really boring, painful, but we promise that we won't make it boring and painful. How's the noise, by the way? How's the mic? Is it okay? Okay. We're going to talk today about a suite of products and how we pull in information and manage that information to optimize an experience where we believe the gap has happened between quality of service versus quality of experience, and we'll explain that a little bit. So as we get started, I'm going to ask Amy to tell a quick story about this is Bradley. Bradley is who you're talking about now, right?
Well, I think he looks like Bradley Cooper. So doesn't he kind of look like Bradley Cooper, the actor? You know who Bradley Cooper is? A little bit, right? Well, it was better than like Bob is what Roger wanted to name him. So we're calling him Bradley. So Bradley found a nice girl that he wanted to go out with, and he decided to ask her out on a date. So he decides to get prepared for this date. He brushes his teeth, he buys a new shirt, he's got a new tie, polishes his shoes. He's all spiffy looking there. It's pretty cute. He gets his car. It's not him, it's the valet bringing him his car, right? He goes and gets it filled up with gas, and he's really making sure that everything is going well for this date. He goes and valet parks the car at the restaurant, and they go into the restaurant, and it's lovely, and everything is set up as it should be. It's perfect quality, perfect everything. All the different pieces are taken care of. So I'm from California, so the workman's comp insurance is taken care of. The USDA has inspected all the produce and all the food. The public health services looked over the restaurant and the handling of their food. They've done everything that they could. They've got to have some alcohol, tobacco, got to make sure that they can have a little drink there, make things go a little smoother. And so all these pieces are set up really for a great experience on this date. The POS system is good. We can swipe the credit card, and this is the lovely place setting that they have. And they continue, the sous chef comes out and shows them the lovely array of sushi that he has there for them. There's another beautiful picture of the meal that they can dine on, and then we see his date. And she doesn't look very happy. Was this a good quality of service? I mean, I've said all along, this isn't a trick question. It was good, right?
It was good, yeah.
And good quality of experience?
No.
Why not? You don't know.
Pick the wrong girl, you know?
Probably part of it, but she doesn't like fish.
She's allergic to fish.
Took her to a sushi restaurant, and she doesn't like fish, or she's allergic to it, or whatever, and so she's going, wait a minute, this isn't working for me. So we kind of did this as a little funny way to show the difference between quality of service and quality of experience. You could have the service levels set and they could be working, but the experience could be terrible. So my example is always with my IT guy, who I swear doesn't have a sensible bone in his body, but he'll give you like this 20-step method to connect to the VPN. I'm like, Tim, I'm on the road. I don't have time to go through these 20 steps to connect to the VPN. So yes, the service could work, but my experience is terrible. I don't want to go through all that, so I find a workaround. We use Dropbox now instead of having to connect to the shared servers to get things, so that I can do it on the road, I can do it on my phone, on my iPad, because I want to have a good quality of experience as well as good quality of service.
So we believe that people have forgotten in technology what the idea of technology was supposed to provide. So Steve Jobs, there's a quote, and some of you saw in the class the other day, when technology fades into the background, it becomes useful and effective, right? We're really good at connecting computers together. And in fact, the tools that are out there, most people believe when they walk into an environment that the tools are going to work, right? Most people that see the technology here at the show think, Andy might be the exception, because I remember one year we were at the show and they showed some new technology and he said, yeah, but it only runs in a lab with 4 things tweaked and things running. But usually the technology will work. The question is, will it work in my environment? How do I take this back to my company and utilize this? But what we're seeing all across the country is that technology teams are forgetting to move to the people and ask them how to help it. You know, bring your own device. It's a big pain for a lot of people, right? I mean, it's an issue that's brought up constantly. Okay? Does anybody ever ask about how that helps the bottom line of a company? Very rarely. Most projects go in without a strategy, without an approach, and we forget what we're trying to do for the people in an environment. Instead of worrying about whether the things can talk, we worry about whether they can, not whether they should. What does it mean to the company? How does it work, and what does that do? And then how do I understand that? I'll give you a quick story. At a company, they They didn't have a tool set in place. They went out, they decided that their salespeople should have iPads. Anybody here complain if your company came and said you get an iPad? Would you think that'd be cool, right? So they go buy 50 iPads. They go deploy them to their sales team, and nothing happens. Their profits don't go up, their performance doesn't go up, the number of hours working doesn't go up. But what they even missed was that when we came into it, we said, well, there's some easy ways to tell if the technology is being used. What is the percentage of data plan on your mobile system? Did it go up or down? And it didn't change at all. Okay, did your Wi-Fi network change at all? They had no idea. We go into this whole process and go through this thing with them, and then we asked the question and said, what do they use it for? And they said, well, we use it to connect in and do quotes faster. And so we turned to the sales team and we said, what are you using these iPads for? And they said, well, nothing, because it doesn't work with our software. And so they forgot to go to the core of the piece, which was iPads don't run this Windows-based application that they had to do their quotes on. So guess what they had bought for all these employees? They were great toys for their kids at home. But they didn't have all the key measurements and metrics in place that would have let them see that there were problems going on in their environment. Their data plan should have gone up, right? You can't deploy that many iPads and not have that be impacted. Their Wi-Fi network should have increased, right? If you're mobile and running around your building, you better be using some of that. So people are just missing understanding what that network capacity is, and they're either not deploying the right technologies, or they're failing to take advantage of the technologies they've deployed. As we go through today, I'll summarize with kind of three key topics: dollars, devices, and behavior. So what should I buy? How should I buy it? What's the best way to buy it? The devices themselves, are they running correctly? Are they healthy? And are they giving me the benefit that I want? And am I encouraging the right employee behavior and discouraging the wrong employee behavior? And those three categories, if you think about all the technology in your environment and tie back those things back from that investment, you can really understand whether you're making a difference or an impact in your companies or not, okay? Understanding user expectation is a huge deal. Now, quite often people don't know how to answer the question of how do you use technology. And so our tool set will give some ways to understand how they're using things. How do they use their mobile devices? How do they use the phone systems and the networks, and where does that come from? And some of that comes from data out of the devices themselves, and some of that comes from monitoring certain behaviors and applications. And then again, making the tools invisible. Amy mentioned the pain of logging into a VPN and how fun that can be. If we can't make the technology a second thought, we're failing as technologists, right? So Christmas Day, I'm at my sister's house. My 5-year-old niece pulls out her iPhone. I don't know what my iPhone is. She opens presents that were sent from her cousins in Maryland. She's running around the house. She's completely mobile. She's got a FaceTime video going on. She shows these presents. She's texting Grandma and Grandpa. She makes a phone call to her other cousins in Florida, actually, that I'm going to go see in a couple days. And she's the only person I've ever met that gets unified communication. Talk to who you want, when you want, where you want, on the device that you want. She completely got that. Then I go to work, after the Christmas holidays, and I go into a customer, and they're going to have a video conference. They have 4 engineers, just like we saw before we started this seminar today. They get there 3 hours early. They really hope it will work. They think they get it kind of tweaked. They plug it in, and then they wait for it to crash. Now, why is it that my 5-year-old niece gets that unified communication, and corporate America can't achieve that? They can't deliver that. And quite often it's the basis of the fact that my niece has an agenda. She gets what the strategy is, right? Play with the phone till you're totally comfortable with it. Have it on your couch. Take it to bed. She's not stock trading yet like the baby on those commercials, but she hasn't learned those quotes. But most of America goes in without a strategy, not from a project management perspective. Okay. So when we show this slide in presentations, quite often people say that's not true, because when I put a technology in, I have a project plan, I have a budget, I meet the budget, I'm on time to the budget, and those kind of things. What this study showed was they forgot to go to the C-suite and ask whether they should. What was the goal? How do they drive to the bottom line? And so they try to mass deploy mobility, mass deploy unified communication. The fact of the matter is unified communication can't be thrown at a company. It needs to be very carefully selected and put into specific departments that get the greatest benefit from that effort. So a governing strategy requires information, and without having that strategy, we set ourselves up to fail before we begin. Okay? So like I said, dollars, devices, and behavior. If you can understand what you're spending money on, what you're expecting the result of that to be, you can optimize its performance, which allows me to deliver a better result. And let's talk about that result for just a minute. I think the people I've talked to all across the country have been lied to. They believe that voice over IP and unified communication is supposed to be easier and cheaper and better. Would you all agree that that's the perception of unified communication? Okay, that's because you've tried to put it in, right? That's why you're not raising your hand. But most users would think, okay, I want something that's easier and better and cheaper, or I wouldn't go there, right? What the truth is the experience can be much more robust, but that robustness comes with complexity that falls on our shoulders, and if that complexity isn't managed with a tool set, we're almost unable to deliver that experience that they're expecting. How often do you have technology sit unused? Let me know what the average is by Gartner of technology that gets used. It hovers in the 70% range of technology doesn't get used. The features, right? How many people in here use all the features on their phone? How many people's phones are in out of office mode? Anybody? Have them forwarded to your cell phone, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. If we don't use that technology, the fact of the matter is people pick up the phone, they dial, they make a conference call, they transfer a call, they drop that call in. So why do I spend hundreds of hours and huge amounts of money doing RFPs to go select technology based on a criteria set that's usually decided for me by my vendor, right? And there's nobody from Avaya in the room, so I can't offend them. But Avaya walks in with a preconceived decision on what you're going to buy and then doesn't ever go look at your current environment, okay? The power of big data and communication is we have more information at our hands than ever before to make better decisions based on what's already being done, what's already being used. Okay? If you take this methodology and define what your solution is, design the correct answer, which we usually skip that step because Avaya takes us there, integrate all the pieces together, optimize the performance, we're better able to manage that robust experience. Okay? I don't know what happened to this slide there. In a communication ecosystem, we have the physical layer, we have cabling that goes on top of that, we have the network technology and mobility. If you take that idea, dollars, devices, and behavior, and go to each piece of your technology in your environment and line out what those steps are for each piece of that technology, you'll have a plan that will help you get a better budget. It'll go in and drive that budget for your management and help you explain why you should spend that money. It's a very powerful way to go in. And how many people will need more budget? Have too much budget. Alan has too much budget at the airport, right?
That's it.
You're constantly fighting that. I'll tell you that when I've worked with communication managers and they've walked in and they've had a plan together that addressed every single piece of the ecosystem with the entire life cycle of that ecosystem, they're better able to work with their vendors, they're better able to work with their management, and most importantly, they're better able to work with their users. Okay? We had a customer recently. Anybody know who Leatherman Tools is? Ever have a Leatherman? Want to tell the story of Leatherman really quick? So Leatherman is out of Portland, if I'm not mistaken. Help me out here. Okay. They decided that they were going to put in video conferencing. So they go out and they select. Again, they spent hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars creating an RFP. They select this the video conferencing solution. They put the video conferencing solution in. And now it's this IP solution, so they crashed their entire network. The cost to repair the network was almost 3 times greater than the cost of the video conferencing solution. And they had failed to budget for any kind of problems like that. So the manager went in and said, okay, I just ruined the network. I took all our email down. I took all of our voice systems down. The video conferencing is working, but nothing else seems to be working. And my budget to fix this is this big, huge check that you're not ready for. And so they spent that money. And then they immediately said, you will never put in another piece of technology until you understand what impact it's going to have on our environment. They found us and they started to deploy our suite, and that's some of the things we'll go through today. It's a matter of time when you're adding technologies, before you crash your network. It's all fighting for that bandwidth. It's all looking for that same bandwidth. At some point, unless you understand your environment, one of these things is going to come in and you're going to deploy that. Now, like I said in the beginning, everybody knows that the technology works in an isolated demo type situation. The question is, will it work in my environment? That's what this tool set provides. By putting something in the cloud and pulling data out of all these disparate systems, pulling that up to a centralized place where I can give my employees the right access to the right information at the right time to make better decisions and use the technology better, I get an increase in usage of technology, I get better performance of that technology, and I get a greater impact from that technology, which allows me to go get bigger budgets and do it again and again. Okay? We start with knowledge. Understanding is power, and walking into a budget meeting is pretty powerful if you know exactly what your environment does. We have a product called VXPulse. VXPulse is a cloud-based monitoring application. It connects to everything that many of the SolarWinds you might use for that. Somebody mentioned to me earlier, SolarWinds. Any SNMP traps, NetFlow traps, legacy devices. Take it a step further. We deploy a micro appliance and it has a serial port. So we're actually able to plug in to legacy systems that aren't yet on the IP network. Pull information from those. We combine that with a view of voice and quality of experience. So everything that's built inside of this tool is designed to provide the reporting that allows you to know not only what's happening in your new environment, because when do you get a budget for a new tool? When you buy a new phone system, right? Or when you buy a new video conferencing system, because you hide it, right? Andy would never do this, but he's never hidden the tool that he really wants to run the system with inside the total price of the technology, but that's how it happens. Well, day one of a new technology typically goes really well. Day two usually goes well. Day 22 can have a problem depending on how much Pandora or something's in your environment. Day 222 is when things start to fail. So we plug into the environment, we pull data from multiple sources, we normalize that data, and we prioritize it based on the quality of experience for voice and unified communication. Okay? We can get into that a little further here in just a minute. Okay? Then to optimize that, oops, I hit the wrong button, sorry. You have to optimize that. How many people are dealing with all of these problems right now? Do you have are all these fall under your responsibility? Do you have PCs that fall under you? No. Computers are different department, right? They a cohort? Do they work for you, or do you work for them? Neither. Colleague then? You got a peer there that works. What about you?
I could probably hit everything up there.
And are you dictated on what happens by the network team? Are you part of the network team? Do you work side by side? There's no power struggles going on, right?
I'll show the rest.
It never happens, right? One of the things that I hear most often is, well, that's not my responsibility, so I don't have to worry about it. And so it's like, and then because I have no responsibility for it, and I'm not responsible for it, it can't impact my life. Well, we all know that when we all get on the same network, the person that controls the network is the one that decides whether things work or not, right? Would you agree with that? And so understanding that environment, even though it's not maybe run by you or your direct responsibility, is critical. So that's why we pull additional information in for that as well. I was actually with Microsoft. They had a problem with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Okay, so they're bidding on a phone system. And I know this is not an Avaya story, so I'll step outside the Avaya world for just a second. It's a $40 million contract. Microsoft's trying to run a pilot project inside of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Anybody from Pennsylvania? You were from Ohio, so I'm okay there. It's not a state. I don't know why they don't call it a state. It's a Commonwealth. I offended them because I called it a state once. Just, that's a friendly tidbit. But they deploy this pilot for Microsoft Link. Okay? Every 64 seconds into a call, the call would drop every time. Pointing fingers, it's the Link people, it's the phone system people, it's the network guys. The long and short of it is that Microsoft got fired, kicked out the door, left the building, right? In a last-ditch effort, we had a brand new relationship with them. They called us. We deployed 2 of our micro appliances. We sent them out there. We plugged them in. We pulled the data in, and we found out that the problem was in a data center across town, a SQL server had 2 network cables plugged into it, both into the same network, which caused a loop. And that loop was causing that failure because the calls would route one way for 64 seconds and then flip over to the other link. Now, whose fault was it?
Yours, Frank.
It was Bob or Frank or whoever that ran SQL servers, right?
It was the guy that went.
He's a state employee. He's protected for life. But you know what? That SQL farm had been running for years without a problem because data absorbs some of those problems much easier than voice, right? So you know what? You know who really took the hit? The Microsoft sales guy that was losing a $40 million contract. Guess how many clients he has? One. It's the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Guess who he gets to sell to? One. Guess what? The only add-on he had been able to do since Office 13 had come out was Link, and he lost the whole thing. And he says, I'll never go in without a tool like that. So again, just because you don't own that part of the environment doesn't mean you don't need to understand it. Our tool set provides those kind of things. So again, understand what that communication is, get a better result. So let's jump in, since the title of the class is about our tool, we'll jump into some of the things that we provide. Pulling data in doesn't matter unless you understand what to do with that data, and it has to be in the right person's hands at the right time. So one of the core drivers of our tool is we don't license by login or by view or by user. Okay? Everybody needs different kinds of data. We have people that use the tool to map the numbers for their cell phone reports so they can bill that back to the end users at the end of the month. So they log into a web browser to do that. Network people care about different things. Executive management cares about different things. The key is seeing data and understanding what that data means and delivering that to the right person. I'm going to zero in on this graph for just a second and give you some examples. And this happens to be a mobile dashboard. So our tool set allows us to pull in all the records from both AT&T and Verizon and lay them right next to the rest of your communication platform. So I can tell you that Amy makes 52% of her calls from her desk phone. Doug, one of my employees in the back, makes 76% of his calls from his desk phone. I can tell what those calls are. I can map those calls and report on those calls and understand how they're using that technology like I mentioned before. Okay? This is the number of texts that these phones sent, and this is the number of phone minutes they used on their mobile plan. Can you tell me which which employees I should care about? Any ideas? John?
The high ones, obviously.
Okay, so I care about this one?
Sure.
Do I care about this one?
You should.
Okay, so let's analyze these. Who am I, first of all? Let's say I'm the finance guy. Which one do I care about?
The minutes, dollars.
Okay. What does an unlimited texting plan cost? Brian. I can just say Brian. Get multiple answers, right? Do you know what an unlimited texting plan cost? $4.99, right? $5, $6. Okay, so if I'm a finance clerk, my job is to lower the cell phone bill, and I see this, and I sign them up for unlimited texting. Have I solved the problem?
Yeah.
Sure. Finance guy solved this problem because the bill went down because that's the best way to buy unlimited texting. Okay? Now, if I'm an operations guy, and I see that number of texts is actually 16 text messages an hour, every hour of the workday, and I drive a heavy piece of equipment, have I solved my problem? Obviously not, because that guy shouldn't be texting like that, right? So these outliers matter, but not from a financial perspective. Most people deal with mobility problems on the finance side. They look at it and say, how do I lower the bill? Verizon walks into your building and says, you know what, go unlimited text, go unlimited data, go shared data. That's going to make everything better, right? We believe that understanding the use of that technology allows you to deliver a better result. What everybody, when I give this graph, misses is this piece. Why is nobody using the technology? These users, on average, and you can't see this, but they spend $75 a month on average for mobile phones. Look at the number of people that don't use the technology at all. How do I take this number of people and drive it here using the tools that you already have in place? You can't do that. So we bring in a tool set that allows you to see this, pull those records in, and understand it not only from a finance perspective, but also from an executive perspective, a bandwidth consumption perspective, customize those views and give it back to the employee at the right time to make the right decision. So the finance guy can tweak the bill, but the operation guy can get the guy that's driving a drill to quit texting while he's running heavy equipment, which is a fairly big liability, and figure out why nobody's using the technology and get up to here in this baseline where the benefit of having that tool in place actually exists. Okay? I already mentioned some of the different tools that people have out there. We go into environments all the time, and they're running 8 different things, right? You've got a VPN client for remote control and connectivity into your PBXs to fix them, or your systems to fix them. You're running some kind of SNMP trap some net flow information, you've got it mapped, you've got some backup of configs, you're doing some MRTG graphs and some bandwidth testing, and you're monitoring that. We deploy a small micro appliance. That micro appliance either has a serial connector or an IP connector. You're able to remote control into any device that you have out there through the cloud from anywhere you happen to be. Okay? Once you're connected into that, you can monitor and manage that entire environment. So what happens is we create a tunnel in the back that lets you run whatever tool set you're currently running to go manage those devices. So you can run whatever client you're currently using, whether it's VNC or some other hybrid of that. Once we've done that, we're able to remote control and manage that environment with one single tool, one single login, one single benefit. One of the things that we have customers talk about is the fact that I don't want to go change the passwords on 80 different things, so I give my engineers access into VX Pulse, which then has the remote control capability into all those devices. Then when that employee leaves, I change a password at VX Pulse level, and then I don't have to worry about the core critical infrastructure and changing it everywhere I go. Okay? Many of the people that utilize our tool are preparing to go to put in an IP network, a voice over IP system. So we start with a readiness assessment tool. We monitor those calls and give you a standard MOS score. One of the things I'll tell you about the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we were able to go back and look at the history of the call records during that pilot. We found that 98.4% of the calls were successful with a MOS score of 4 or higher, which is the measurement. So remember that $40 million contract that they lost, what was the percentage failure rate that got them fired? 1.4%. 1.6, 1.4. Anyway, think about that for a minute. Does data get you fired for that? Any IT guy in here worry about 1.4% drop or failure rate? We have to think of voice totally differently. So we started the readiness assessment test. We then are monitor and remote control and alert based on problems. So you can see here the map. I can draw this map any way I want with my critical devices all the way down to the IP handset, all the way up to the core infrastructure. I monitor routers, switches, firewalls, hubs, anything that can get in my way that can cause that quality of experience problem. Because we deploy on a small micro appliance, quite often we can get in without having the permission of the network team to change that. Am I running out of time, by the way? No. And then provide automatic reporting, so you don't have to be logged in to see it. So standard SMS alerts, email alerts, signal a help desk trouble ticket system, launch a screen, browser screen, whatever that might be. Okay. As you look at understanding this, network load testing is a critical part of this. If Leatherman Tools knew what their network could handle before they started, they wouldn't have crashed their network with video. Monitoring that network and understanding when it starts to have a problem avoids having somebody plug in that aren't allowed to create an issue. And it also avoids mobility users coming into the network and crashing the network because you give out your Wi-Fi password one time, they put it on 7 or 8 different devices that they own, usually the ones they got for Christmas, or their niece comes in who happens to have an iPhone like I mentioned before and she's playing on your Wi-Fi network. I'll tell you this, if you currently have bring your own device policies in place, or you're providing mobility devices, and you don't know what impact that is having on your network, you're just waiting for a problem. Doug mentioned his presentation the other day, the percentage of traffic that was Pandora. I'm going to ask anybody that heard that yesterday not to mention this, but any idea what percentage of network traffic is now Pandora today? Any guess? 50? 15? What was it, Doug?
25 to 30% of all Pandora traffic is happening on mobile devices.
On mobile devices.
Overall, it's 15 to 20%.
15 to 20%. Okay, but think about that. Nobody can afford the data plan, so they're not doing it on 3G, 4G, and LTE, right? So they're coming into your environment. So your Wi-Fi network is going like this. And if you don't know when it's going to crash, you should. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. You guys monitor your Wi-Fi access points? He's nodding. Do you monitor your Wi-Fi access points? Not your responsibility, right?
Sure. Yeah.
When you plug in Aura Flash and get mobile on Aura, it's going to be something that can impact the quality, right? The Link guys at Commonwealth of Pennsylvania weren't worried about SQL servers, right? But it impacted them. So you better understand that entire environment. This tool set gives you the ability to do that. So again, pre-assessment, monitoring, reporting, remote control, protect against having everybody on the same system. I'll tell you what happened as the final takeaway on the Pennsylvania story. They got their providers all on the phone. They got the network team on the phone. They got the voice team on the phone. They got on a WebEx, and they pulled up this screen. And they heard one guy in the background go, And then the problem was solved. So everybody was pointing fingers until they had a common language and a common tool to use. So part of why we've been successful, okay? Now how do you pay for it? One of the biggest ways to pay for it is understanding current usage as you move towards that way. A lot of people think this is important anymore, but Amy, talk about some of the, we have a story later on, but why don't you tell it now about the trunk health and how we save money there?
Sure, so not everybody's gone to voice over IP, obviously. We'll still have TDM trunks and are monitoring them. And so, what are we looking at in terms of our trunk capacity on utilization, or how well are they utilized? We've had customers that have put our system in and been able to run reports and say, okay, yeah, this trunk, the first one, looks really great. It's running a good occupancy for the most part. It does hit up high. We have this other rollover trunk, and it's really, really low. Now, we've gone into organizations that have had 3 or 4 of these kind of trunks that are all really, really low. And so can you maybe disconnect a T1 and be able to save some money? So St. Joseph's Healthcare in Southern California, who did that, and a bunch of their clinics had 2 or 3 T1s apiece, went in, did the analysis, and found that we could really get rid of 1 or even 2 of the T1s at those facilities and say they were paying like $500 a month per T1. And so, $1,000 a month savings, a pretty significant savings, especially at these small little health clinics. So that's been a significant one for them. In security and human resources, and then we've moved over, I don't know if you mentioned, to our VX Tracker product line. So also a cloud-based application can be run on a server in your office as well, if that's what you prefer. But this is really taking the call detail records out of any and every PBX. So we can take it out of the Avaya if you buy another company and you also have to deal with a Mitel or a Cisco or a Siemens or something else up there, we work with that. We also work with the ASCOM phones. We work with WriteFax servers, so lots of other things that put out SMDR records we can handle. And so we can do immediate call alerts. Now, when we say immediate, really it is once the call is completed, but we do process those call records in real time. We're not polling at the end of the night. We are getting that information right when it happens. And so usually it's like 6 to 10 second delay. Somebody calls 911, or there's a threatening call of some time. You can go, log in, either get an alert on it, hey, a 911 call happened at this extension. We usually find that those are misdialed calls, but the person on the line doesn't always stay on the line to say, hey, I didn't really need to call 911, I'm sorry, don't send the truck. Instead, they freak out and they hang up. This way you could have them call back and be able to say, you know what, that was a false alarm, please don't roll trucks. Also be able to look for
hit the button.
An easy call search. So the operators always love, people call them, hey, you keep faxing me, make it stop. And all it says is Duke Energy. They have no idea. We're a huge organization. I'm sorry, I don't know what fax machine that one is. Hopefully it will only happen 3 times and then stop. Meanwhile, the person that's trying to fax dials the number. It happens 3 times. They walk by, they're like, oh, my fax didn't go through. They hit start again. They walk away again, and it keeps going. So this is a way to be able to say, you know what, I'm sorry, caller. What's your phone number? Put their phone number into the system and be able to quickly pull it up and say, oh, it looks like it was Ann that was doing that. I'll call her and have her stop. Now, I always warn people that only works if you name that extension, that fax extension, something other than fax machine. So call it third floor HR fax, or call it, Ann's fax machine, whatever you want, but have it be named something that you can easily go find. One of the things we were talking about with one of the other customers who has the Avaya call center application report is there's not a lot of details in terms of what happened to a call that hung up in queue. And so one of the things that we can pull is the queues in the Avaya are technically an extension. And so if a call detail record hangs up, if a caller hangs up while they're in queue, we can pull an extension report for that extension number and say, okay, these are all the caller IDs that were hung up in queue. We also have the ability not only to put the city and state by that, but we could do an import from your CRM database and say these phone numbers are attached to these clients. So you could see, oh, ABC customer called me, they hung up in queue. Let me call Joe from ABC customer in our CRM here and say, hey Joe, did you need something? Did you hang up in queue? Did you not get what you needed? So that's a great report to be able to send to a dispatch manager or call center supervisor, maybe every day at noon, and then again at like 4 o'clock or something, periodically throughout the day, so that they could go and say, hey, it looks like we need to call this customer back, they didn't get helped. So easy way to be able to go find those. You can also drill into any one of the users. So you see up there, we have customer support. We can drill in and see the users. We click on Alvin, we can see his extension and see all the calls that he made or received, both in the queue as well as on his backline. So if you just pick up the phone and called somebody, you would be able to see that. Or if he really gave his extension number out to his few favorite customers, and they aren't calling from the queue anymore, but now they're just calling him directly, if you're looking at his queue statistics, it looks like he's not working. Wait a minute, these other agents took 30 calls apiece in this period and you took 10? Are you not working? Well, no, look at my whole report. These people are calling me directly. Well, maybe there's a reason that they should be calling him directly, or maybe those customers need to be retrained to call back into the queue so they can get the first available agent and not just be waiting for him when he's off the phone. So easy ways to be able to just drill in and look at that. In this case, we just showed Alvin's one extension. If Alvin had a desk phone and a cell phone, we could pull up and see both of those calls separately or together.
One common use of this tool is to understand whether we're talking to our best customers. So there's companies that come in and say, you know, these customers represent 20% of my, or 80% of my revenue, and you can actually run a report that shows everybody and how they talk to them, and you can say, did I talk to them once a quarter? Did I talk to them once a year? Can I measure and follow through on, again, that behavior, right? How do I go help the sales team be more effective? How do I help the account management team be more effective? And so going in there, if you haven't talked to those customers, then all of a sudden one day they leave you for one of your competitors and you don't know why. Well, you never talked to me. You never helped me. You never provided me any information. So the ability to do that, not only from traditional PBXs, but from cell phones and all the mobile devices out there, and be able to show the real communication patterns, helps you encourage that right behavior towards customers as well in a positive way, not just a big brother way. Quite often when people deploy this tool, they pull the information in and they wonder, they're looking for abuse, right? And so whether it's this report or a cell phone report, we had one group that Verizon had told them to charge $450 for, assign 450 minutes per each employee. Anything over that, then charge the employee for that. One of their employees had 1,800 minutes a month, so they were charging the difference from 450 to 1,800. Okay. What they didn't ever correlate, again, data helps you understand this, is that he was their number one salesperson, that he had zero abuse on the system. He was actually making customer calls without exception. And they changed the question from how come you're using 1,800 minutes to this guy to why aren't you using 1,800 minutes to this sales guy to enhance that. So understanding the call patterns of employees both in call centers and on landlines and PBXs and phone systems and mobility allows you to have information in people's hands to make better decisions, which really allows that analytical information to become valuable.
So here's what we're talking about, the VX Mobile, being able to see those extensions on desk phone side by side.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Well, I can't see very well. So healthcare vertical, we talked a little bit about St. Joseph. They were also able to reduce their 411 calls. They didn't really realize that they had this rampant 411 calling issue. But they were being paid thousands of dollars a month for people who were basically just being lazy, picking the phone and calling 411. And so, either being able to say, let's reduce the number of these calls by having them not do it, or let's reroute those calls to a different phone number that we're going to pay less for. And so, either of those options are great for being able to just reduce that cost because they had the visibility into, yes, this is how many calls we're making was really important for them. For government vertical, we have lots of government customers. I know nobody here is one, but wanting to allocate costs, have an audit trail for security, 911 notifications. The city of Southgate was one we did a case study on. BAE and L3 Telemetry West are both defense companies. BAE Systems makes big tanks and planes and things like that. And they have an interesting issue that they have partial ownership that's not from the United States. And so there's a law called FOCI that says if you have foreign ownership or investment control of your company, we need to account for every international call that you make. And so they use VX Tracker to be able to say, okay, these are all the international calls that I made, and here's an accounting of them, and they actually have an audit that they have to comply with. So being able to look for things like that, delivering the right contact, for being able to log into the system and say, okay, I'm going to look for this kind of report for productivity, but I need to do it for this FOCI compliance. And like you said, we don't charge for the number of logins, so each of those managers can go in and get those kind of reports.
They also have over 150 disparate systems. So they grow by acquisition. So they buy these companies and they've got old Siemens and NEC and other types of systems, normalizing that data and providing that back in the same format, the same way for everybody, whether there's a little bit of Cisco in your environment. Not, you'd ever say that in an Avaya show, or you're moving from Nortel to Avaya. Those reports all function and work the same across the board. Okay. The power of correlating that information is what changes it from data that everybody ignores and turns off and makes be quiet, right? So I can't tell you the number of network guys I talk to that their alarms are set at a level that they can ignore, right? They're beeping, something's wrong, but they haven't set the threshold that it really matters, and so they know that it's just something I don't have to worry about. Correlating data from multiple data sources, legacy phone systems, new phone systems, video conferencing systems, routers and switches, net flows, firewalls, and correlating that together changes your world from trying to understand multiple disparate things coming in and lets you focus on those key three things. Dollars, device, behavior. What should I buy? How do I buy it? What's the best way to buy it? How do I spend that money and make sure it's giving me the return that I wanted and those devices are working healthily, effective, and giving me that return? And how do I encourage that right behavior and discourage the wrong behavior from those employees? We sell our suite modularly. So again, it's cloud-based. It can be plugged in one module at a time. The 4 modules, just to quickly summarize: VX Pulse, everything about the network and infrastructure that can cause me problems or I might need to control and manage. Again, routers, switches, firewalls, net flows, SNMP, legacy devices. VX Tracker is our analytical engine. It's where we take our data inside, manipulate that data, and understand exactly what's happening across that technology. VX Mobile combines those two functions together for that mobile side. So how do I pull those records in and understand what my mobile environment looks like, both from a Wi-Fi network type of situation as well as the call reports and call detail out of those carriers. And then our latest module is VX Record, which allows us to record those platforms and pull those recordings in. We're actually in beta for Avaya, where you'll be able to run a call detail report and click play to play that call, and that should probably be out towards the end of the year. And so as we get closer to that, it will be SIP-based reporting. Again, a cloud-based interface that allows me to log in and dial that. And it's probably, like I say, we'll probably be in release of that towards the end of the year. As that happens, again, a manager can rate that call, manage that call, and then provide that. Some of the key differentiators: the sticky filters we provide let you be an investigative resource for your company. It doesn't require you to know what you're looking for before you begin. And as you drill in and find the answers through these tool sets, you're able to save those reports and provide those to the people that might need them. Forward them onto your sales manager, forward onto your executive team. Provide them a dashboard that's completely different than what they've got about how they're utilizing technology. And then it lets you go into your budget meetings with a completely different understanding of how the environment works and the world works. So whether it's a hostile environment where you're competing with your colleagues, and I hate to say this, but quite often we're fighting for budget. The guy that's the most prepared usually wins. So you walk in with a detailed understanding of usage and impact towards the bottom line, as well as a collaborative environment where people are really trying to deliver that quality experience, and back to that user impact, which the user gets what they wanted, which was an easier and cheaper experience, right? And while that's not a given, we can provide that with the right set of management tools and procedures. So I'd ask you to swing by our booth and let us show you a demo of the product and drill into it if it's interesting to you. Everybody's dealing with these problems at some level and trying to correlate that key information. So any questions? I don't know what the time is. One of these nice shirts, it comes free with a sign up of a 2-year contract. What's that? You know what? Actually, I don't know if I can get you one of these because they're a Men's Warehouse clearance sale, and I'm not positive they have the sizes, but I'll see what I can do for you. But thank you for that. So I actually got stopped coming out of my hotel room this morning, and he said, the guy came out of his room across the hall, and he goes, "That's a great shirt. How do I get one of those? Prognosis won't give me one ever." Well, Prognosis is a VX Pulse competitor, and I said, this is an easy answer to unbutton my shirt. And said, "Come on in here for just a second, we're going to talk." So they can be bribed, they can be bought, they can be provided with a contract. So any other questions? Okay. I appreciate your attention of being here today. We're in booth